All right, viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening once again, and welcome to this interesting interview. And this is part two of my interview with Andrew Mueller, the presenter of the Foreign Desk Explainers, Foreign Desk and Foreign Desk Explainers on Monocle Radio there at Maduri House in the UK. We talked a lot in the first episode with Andrew Mueller about generality of journalism and his work as a foreign correspondent. And right now we're going to grill him. I'm going to pepper him with hard-hitting questions about his show and some of the issues that he covers. And I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from the ocean of his knowledge. Andrew Mueller, welcome back to the show.
Pleasure to be here again.
Well, let's kick off. What do we have to know about Monocle Radio, for example?
Monocle Radio, I think, launched in about 2012. It's an online-only radio station produced by the same people who produce Monocle magazine, as well as the shows I host. There's two daily news shows every weekday, The Globalist and The Briefing, as well as The Daily. And there's lots of specialist shows. There's a culture show, a food and drink show. There's a show about urbanism. There's a show about design. There's loads of stuff. And your viewers can find it all at monocle.com/radio. I think I've remembered that right. But yeah, it's quite a small team that works very hard, and we do produce what occasionally strikes me as an absolutely bizarre amount of audio content, but it is all very good.
Definitely, I can testify to that. Since the first time I came across Monocle Radio in 2021, I was like on the internet that was in July 2021, when the Chinese Communist Party celebrated its 100-year anniversary. And I was like, oh, let me go and get an analysis, an audio podcast analysis on that. I just went on the internet. I write Chinese 100-year anniversary, a podcast audio. Just Monocle Radio popped up, and it was The Globalist. I listened to that episode, and I just got the hang of everything. So towards the end of 2023, and that was the first time I got to know about Monocle Radio, and I stopped. But then towards the end of 2023, I was searching, looking for some podcast channels to follow. Then I also came across Monocle Radio, and I discovered that there are a bunch of shows that are interesting, appealing to me, like your own, the Foreign Desk, the Monocle Daily, and the Urbanist presented by Andrew Tuck, your namesake, the editor-in-chief, and a bunch of other programs that I do listen to from time to time. Georgino Godwin, right, is mostly the president of the Globalist. There's this guy, Charmak. Chris Charmak also, yeah. I really like it when you were at the Munich conference, Munich Security Conference. He had an interview with you. I know it's funny at the end of your show, the Monocle Daily. I mean, you said a small team, but then absolutely bizarre, to use your own word, an incredible amount audio content. How do you do it?
I'm honestly not sure. I think that the obvious answer is the obvious answer, which is that though it is a very small team, it's an extremely talented one, and it works really, really hard. But I mean, I can't speak for anybody else. I hope it's true. I mean, the thing is, it is just always fun. I enjoy doing the daily every day. I enjoy making the Foreign Desk every week. It's always interesting. You always get to speak to interesting people when you're doing it. And, you know, I most days, there's at least one moment of being able to think, well, okay, that's something I didn't know when I woke up this morning. And that to me has always been one of the things that has appealed about being a journalist. You're just always learning things.
Who writes the script for you, especially for the Monocle Daily? First of all,
I do. I write the scripts for the Daily and for the Foreign Desk.
Oh, I thought it's your producers, Emma Saul or Christy O'Grady, that writes the script at Explaners. You said that?
No, Christy and Emma, who produce the Foreign Desk, do pretty much everything else. Emma mostly, but not exclusively, chases up the guests and books the guests and organizes all that. And Christy mostly handles the tech stuff, like making sure that the program is recorded well and sounds good. But there's much more to it than that. They also have a huge say in steering the direction of the show, like what we're going to talk about, how we're going to approach the subject. It is, and everybody, they both bring. Well, actually, I suspect they bring more ideas to the show than I do. But it is very much a team effort between the three of us, and it usually starts with a meeting on Monday of just, okay, what are we doing this week? But so there is overlap, but the way it breaks down is mostly that I write it and present it. Emma chases up the guests, and Christy handles the tech stuff. But there's a lot of overlap, and it is very much a team effort.
You said that they are also contributing immensely to the programs, to the script, to the ideas, to the kind of guests that you interview, the topics you cover. Is it fair to say that they are also as hugely educated and informed in terms of foreign affairs as you are?
Yeah. They're both. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say absolutely yes. I'm always happy to take their ideas on board because they're usually better ideas than any I've ever had. The monologues which introduce the foreign desk, I mean, I do write them, but they have to get approval from Emma and Christy before I record them. There's occasionally a bit of wrangling about one of my sentences being too long, or there being some obscurantist 9-syllable word in them that nobody's ever heard of. And don't tell them I said so, but sometimes I put those in deliberately just to annoy them. But it is very much a team effort in that respect. Yeah.
I mean, that brings us to the issue of play of language, the use of language. How do you do it? Like, is it Andrew Mueller was born naturally like that, an orator to speak using how can I say, vague English, unclear English, not straightforward type of English? I mean, is it something that is naturally in you, or you have picked it up along the line?
I think a bit of both. I mean, I just from the earliest age I can remember, I just read everything. I just read and read and read and read and read, and it's still the case. And I think if you read a lot, you possibly end up especially valuing the people who entertain you while they're doing it. And I was saying this recently to a friend of mine who has just written a book. It's a very good book called Freaks Out. His name is Luke Haynes, and he's an extremely talented writer. But I mean, I'm biased anyway because he's a friend. But what I said to him, and it's always the highest compliment I can pay any book or anything written, that you just get the sense that the person who wrote this was really having a good time, that this was a fun thing for them to do, that there's a joy about the language, they're having fun with it. And that has always appealed to me because I to my perpetual embarrassment, I don't speak any other languages, and I'm very envious of and impressed by people who do. And I'm guessing English is not your only language, right? I mean, this is a thing that always gets me about West Africa. You're speaking to somebody, who is driving a car or working in a shop, and they speak 9 languages, and they don't even think that's that impressive.
Oh.
That always amazes me. But I've just always found the English language incredibly good fun. And it's always, I always enjoy it when that kind of comes off the page or out of the speakers from somebody else. And I'm thinking of writers, again, like PJ O'Rourke, but also someone like Clive James as well, was just one of those people who just sort of seemed to think every sentence was a chance to make the words down a little bit and give people something they could think about or something they could laugh at.
All right, still on Monocle Radio, before we move on to specifically Foreign Desk, how do you normally cover the international issues? Because I know Monocle Radio is a radio station that tries to cover the global stuff, but mostly focused heavily on European matters and the United States of America, though, because there is a great deal of relationship between the West and the Middle East, you cover a lot of Middle East stuff. I understand that there's less coverage of Africa and Nigerian issues. So I would maybe apply for a reporter from Nigeria for radio. If Andrew Mueller could help, I would be delighted. As I'm finishing my university later this month, how do you do it at Monocle Radio? What kind of angle do you take? Because in the US, we have media organizations that are conservative, and there are those that are liberal, for example, those towards more leaning towards the Republican and those more leaning towards the Democrat parts. What's your political ideologies, for example, when it comes to the coverage of issues?
I don't think we approach anything from an especially determined ideological bent. I mean, I'm sure, like, as I was saying earlier, like all institutions of any kind, I'm sure we have Monocle definitely has a worldview, and with any worldview, there go, I guess, biases, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's fine. You are right to point out that the Western media does not cover Africa nearly as much as it should. We are aware of that, and I think we do reasonably well at it. We've certainly done episodes in recent times on Sudan, for example.
Yes,
we've done shows and explainers that have covered other aspects of Africa.
The Senegalese political turmoil. Yes, of course, I've listened.
Yeah, of course. And I would like to think that we're reasonably diligent about that. But yeah, as a general criticism of the Western media, that is absolutely reasonable, and I don't think anybody serious would disagree. But with every given episode, because it's something different every week, it is just always that thing of, the Monday meeting basically boils down to two questions. One is, what are we going to do? And once we've decided on that, it's then, okay, how are we going to do this? Who are we going to talk to about it? And quite often that conversation that's where the idea gets developed. And it's always fun for me when somebody, either one of the three of us, comes to the meeting with what might be a very vague idea, but after we've kicked it around for 15 or 20 minutes, it's just like, okay, right, there's something here. I think I can see a way that we can do this. And then it all does it does fall together quite nicely. So I don't, to go back to the actual question, I don't think there's necessarily a point we're trying to prove or case we're trying to make. It is just, how do we do this? I think one of the benchmarks we basically...
Yeah, do you do it like CNN or like Fox, for example?
I hope not like Fox. And again, like CNN, maybe not so much, because CNN, I think CNN by and large is a very solid offering, but I think they're an old school orthodox TV news network, and there is nothing wrong with that at all, and we should have more of them. I think one of our benchmarks for deciding to proceed with an episode of the Foreign Desk is we just think, okay, what's the show that nobody else would make this week? Or what's the approach to this subject that nobody else would take? We try to be a bit idiosyncratic in that respect, I think is the word I would use.
Yeah. So maybe that is why, instead of focusing on the presidents, you recently produced an episode on the roles of the first ladies.
Yeah, that was fun.
Gentleman. And I like the episode. I listened to it. I think from the beginning, you hosted the husband of Jacinda Ardern, the former prime minister, rather, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know, when I was listening, I said, oh, definitely Andrew Mueller is an intelligent guy, because instead of focusing on the people that are that take the most attention, that drive the most attention, you tend to focus now. You have shifted your focus to something or someone or some people that are also as important players as well, but not
absolutely
or usually or frequently covered.
No, that was a fun episode. I'm pretty sure that was Emma's idea originally. Wow. Or arguably Christie's. It certainly wasn't one that I brought to the meeting, but it was just one of those ones where somebody suggests, you think, oh yeah, obviously this is a great idea, and then it's just about, okay, how do we frame that? And I did like the idea of, it was a slightly counterintuitive idea for the guest, as you noticed, that people usually think, because it usually is a first lady or the equivalent, but we did think actually what would be fun was like, let's see if we can get somebody who's been the first gentleman, and he was just great. He was just, I mean, he's a broadcaster himself, which helps, but it just very dry, very funny, and I really liked his attitude to the whole thing, where he just, because I can well understand for a lot of people that it's an incredibly miserable existence, because you're mercilessly scrutinized, you're horribly judged. If you express any opinion at all, people sort of say, well, who the hell are you? But I think he had just taken the attitude of, okay, this thing is going to happen, just strap yourself in and go with it. Because I think he says more than once, there were just so many experiences where you just found yourself thinking, how on earth else would I be here? Like, how can you not find a way to enjoy this? The stories you'll be able to tell afterwards. No, I thought his attitude to the whole thing was tremendous.
That's great. That's absolutely wonderful. So let's, okay, briefly in a few seconds before I look for the clips that I'm going to start playing to you, what sort of achievements have you recorded right from the beginning of presenting the Foreign Desk and its explainers? And when did you start it?
I started working at Monocle Radio more or less after it launched in about 2013. I think I took over the Foreign Desk from its original host, Steve Bloomfield, in about 2017, maybe something like that. So I've been presenting the Foreign Desk a good while now, and yeah, I was very lucky because, I mean, Steve had basically done all the hard work of setting the show up and establishing the idea of what it should be, and he was a brilliant presenter, and well, he still is a brilliant presenter and a brilliant journalist. He just does it somewhere else now. But in many respects, we just had this template to work with of, okay, this should be a smart and thoughtful and informed foreign affairs program that talks to serious people, doesn't patronize its listeners, but does have a sense of humor as well. And I just thought, well, if we can maintain the standard that Steve established, then yeah, we would be doing well.
One of my favorite explainers that you have presented is the one that you talked about Kim Jong-un's visit to Russia. And let's have a listen to a clip that I got, that I cut out of the episode. In fact, it had to take me more than a week to understand your own, what should I say, bodaciously description of Donald Trump. Kim Jong-un. I was like telling my friends that this guy Andrew Mueller's English is exceptionally unique, and it's so unique that me as an English teacher, I had to spend like 1 week or so to understand this description of Kim Jong-un, somebody that I have grown up like not liking or loving, but somebody that I have grown up passionate about following, whose politics, whose style of leadership is appealing to me, especially in 2017-18 when they were having the war of words with Donald Trump. Let's have a listen to your Kim Jong-un's description.
Yes, imagine choosing to associate with this tin pot tyrant who spends his days seething in the fortified citadel in the heart of his hermit fiefdom, beset by paranoid fantasies and obtuse grudges, generally reviled, admired only by obsequious power worshippers, certifiable dingbats and or Donald Trump, isolated from his peers, probably more frightened of his own associates at home than his many enemies abroad, periodically threatening a baffled world with atomic Armageddon. You really do have to wonder about the company Kim is keeping. Thanks, I'm here all week. Try the borscht and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably grow out of the bait and switch device where you laboriously describe something but then pivot to saying, actually, I'm not talking about the thing you thought I was talking about. I'm talking about the other thing. But it is. It is effective, and I think that was. I mean, that particular gag. How do I explain it? It's a fairly cheap shot in a lot of respects, but I thought for me the humor was just piling up as many descriptions as you could that could be applied to both Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. And if I had a serious intent to that, it was to explain why these two gentlemen have decided to make common cause with each other. And obviously it would have been quicker, I'm sure, to say basically neither of them has any other friends, but that's just not as much fun.
Yeah, I know. It was you that wrote the lines, but then what sort of backlash have you faced from, especially on social media, from Putin's fans and Kim Jong-un's fans? Any?
Well, for that, none whatsoever. And I think probably Monocle is not the kind of radio station that you're going to be tuned into if you are a massive fan of Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, or indeed Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had one or two emails from people saying that I'm always mean about Donald Trump, and that's fine. I don't mind people. I'm always happy to read emails from listeners, but I am kind of surprised, and I have to say, genuinely impressed that somebody who characterizes themselves as a fan of Donald Trump is actually listening to Monocle Radio, because say whatever else you will, there is a person who is open to a diversity of opinion, and I genuinely commend that.
All right, briefly, because I think we have less than 10 minutes to wrap up. Another, you called Kim Jong-un as
Yes, the belligerent, strangely bouffanted son of privilege who lucked into his country's most powerful office despite being manifestly unqualified, shook hands with the General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea, thanks for coming out, and so forth. Kim may
See, it's the same joke again, right? It's just like how many things are there in common between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un? Like I said, regular listeners to the Explainer will know that I am childishly fond of that device, but I don't anticipate that changing.
Okay, so let's have a listen to your description of Mohammed bin Salman, MBS.
Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is an impetuous thug who has wrecked a neighbouring country, Yemen, for no readily discernible reason, and ordered the murder of a journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, who displeased him.
And I, again, before I allow you to talk, your own description of Netanyahu, because the moment you finish describing Mohammed bin Salman as quote unquote impetuous thug, last time I checked the dictionary, it says means impulsive, somebody who does things without thinking. Then Netanyahu also, I thought you were going to be a bit light about him, soft on him, but then you said this.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a belligerent, self-serving, long-past use-by-date barnacle who is governing in cahoots with people he well knows to be certifiable lunatics, at least partially in an effort to keep himself out of prison. Which brings us to what might be in it for the prospective...
I mean, don't you sound, your own word, manifestly harsh on these people, globally politicians?
I mean, I kind of think they deserve it. And again, I don't think anything... Okay, there's always a way to interpret or analyze or describe a given situation, but nothing I said about Benjamin Netanyahu there is factually incorrect, as far as I'm concerned. It's possibly what it might be. And again, I mean, people in his position understand, or at least they should understand, and I'm sure he does understand it because he is the leader of a democracy in a way that Kim Jong-un or Mohammed bin Salman or Vladimir Putin is not, that if you're going to lead a democracy, then yes, people are going to criticize you and they're going to insult you and they're going to make fun of you. And most democratic politicians I have spoken to understand that and don't mind it and realize that it kind of goes with the territory. But what I come back to there is I don't think anything I've said about any of those people is actually inaccurate. I mean, I may have had a bit of fun with how I said it, but I don't think the substance is incorrect.
Okay, next is I've also noticed that you lack giving credits to clips that you normally play or include on your explainers. Let's have a listen to this guy. His name is Ahmed Idris, correspondent for Al Jazeera.
Just a few days ago, coming here for many Gambians was unthinkable. Now, residents are within touching distance of what used to be the official residence of Yahya Jammeh. Now, Senegalese troops are in charge here after disarming Gambian soldiers.
Jammeh took the hint and was last heard of sulking in Equatorial Guinea.
Remember this explainer when you talked about the Senegalese political turmoil?
I do. That was quite recently.
Sure. At university, we have taken a course called Communications Law and Ethics. Communications Laws and Ethics. And there they have seriously talked to us about attribution, giving credits to the sources. But then in the whole of the explainer, there's no mention of Al Jazeera or Ahmed Idris, whose clip has been used in the explainer. How would you defend yourself?
I think with the explainers like that, a very short clip like that, I think is perfectly acceptable under what's thought of as fair use, because you're just trying to create, I think, an atmosphere around the story to give the sense that, you know, this is being covered and this is being discussed, and that clip from Al Jazeera's reporter, I think, bounces it along nicely, and it explains that there is a wider context to this. The other thing as well is just one of basic, how to put it, editorial coherence. That if you've got a 6 or 7 minute explainer and you stop after every clip to explain that was, then half of the explainer gets taken up crediting the clips, and it doesn't really. I think it gets quite distracting and quite distracting for the listener. So I mean, I think it's okay. I mean, it's certainly we don't absolutely no disrespect intended, and I would hope and expect that none is taken. I mean, certainly, you know, again, what I always think of in terms of attribution is, you know, what would I want, and if somebody was making an explainer somewhere else and they just thought they wanted 3 lines of somebody rabbiting on a radio station in London about whatever it was, and they dropped in 10 seconds of my voice, then yeah, I'd be absolutely fine with that.
All right. But to get things clear, you didn't get permission from Al Jazeera or the reporter Ahmed Idris, for example.
Again, I think the fair use thing is fine. I think, you know, once things are in public domain, you are entitled to use a very small amount of them in order to demonstrate a wider point.
That's great. That's great that you have something to back yourself with. Let's listen to another clip from Mohammed Shtaya, Palestinian Prime Minister who recently stepped down. Let's have a listen to it.
أنني وضعت استقالة الحكومة تحت تصرف السيد الرئيس، وذلك يوم الثلاثاء الماضي 20/2/24، واليوم أتقدم بها خطيا.
Whenever any politician quits, there is the reason they say they are going and the reason they are actually going. Sometimes they're...
Andrew, here there is voice over. It's Arabic. A lot of people don't understand Arabic in the West, even in Africa. Me, I understand a little bit of Arabic, not completely, because I did not study Arabic. I've not yet studied Arabic completely. But we are expecting Andrew Mueller to have a voiceover with someone, for example, or Christy or Emma or anybody among the great team of members of the Monocle Radio to like do a voiceover translating word to word what he says. Instead, at the end of the day, you just continued with the explanation, sort of like use 1, 2, 3 sentences to summarize the whole things that you said. Is that not a problem?
No, I don't think so, because again, in that instance, I think what we're trying to, it's mostly there as atmospherics in that particular explainer. What the, you know, the detail of what he said was not really important to the explainer, and it's just it's part of the whole, I guess, painting a picture with sound. You've sort of referred to the person, so here is some sound of them talking. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we do drop in a translation over the top of it when what is being said is actually crucially important to the explainer. But in that particular case, I think it's atmospheric, and I think that's entirely fine.
That's
If
great.
people do, if our listeners do speak Arabic, that's a bonus.
So I think we are running out of time. So Andrew Mueller, before I allow you to go and enjoy the serenity and tranquility of your London evening, let's hear from you your impression, your opinion about Global Arena, this show, and the presenter. That's me presenting the show, and the nature of the interview we've had, the topics we've covered, and so on and so forth.
This has been really good fun for me, and I appreciate you asking, and I appreciate very much the time that has gone into the questions and the research you've done. You are also, by some margin, the best dressed person who has ever interviewed me, so I appreciate that as well. And look, honestly, I'm just always grateful for the fact that we have the listeners we have. I'm aware every week that there's an infinite universe of stuff out there people could be listening to, and the fact that there are people who choose to listen to us is something that we started at the start of this interview talking a bit about why somebody would want to be a journalist, and it wasn't just the idea of sort of going out into the world and finding things out. It's the idea that you might it's the idea that you might write something or say something that will be read or heard somewhere else. And yeah, just this example of it is to me an example of, the strange magic of it, really, that, we make a program in London, somebody listens to it in Nigeria, and yeah, that's replicated thousands of times all over the world. And yeah, every time I think about that, it kind of blows my mind all over again.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I'm not saying this out of bragging or braggadocio or being pompous, but I'm trying to say that I'm trying to make Andrew Mueller as popular as possible here in northern Nigeria where we live, because like almost every day I've been obsessed with your own audios, using my own MP3 Bluetooth player, this one, to play your explainers and some of your interviews, so much so that some of my friends have begun to know you and enjoy your own yes, definitely your own English, because we teach English at an English academy. Mostly our students are adults, and they come over to learn English from us because they were not able to learn when they were children. And now they're doing businesses and they travel abroad. So they understand that they have to have a little bit of English that they can use to communicate with their customers from all over the world. So when I go there, when I am teaching, I think even yesterday, I had to play one of your clips to some of my students. And I was like, okay, whoever understands a single word, it's class 3. A single word, please let me know and pronounce the word. Somebody said, I understood Donald Trump. The other, it was that clip, it was that explainer of yours that you were talking about Putin versus Kim Jong-un. Somebody said he understand Putin, he heard the word Trump. Another person said, I had this word. Another person said, I had that word. And it's like, it's funny because if I want to train my students on listening skills, I have to play to them voices, speeches made by native speakers of English. And one of which is, I believe, Andrew Mueller, somebody who stimulates my own spirit and my own English as well. So I believe if your English can have an impact on me, why not on my students? So I am trying my best to play your audios to my friends and my students as well. That's really absolutely marvelous.
No, I appreciate that hugely. And if anything that we're doing is contributing to anybody else, enjoying the English language as much as I always have, then I am both delighted and humbled. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Any word for my English students so that I can play this particular video to them and say that this is the guy you've been listening to.
I will just say generally hello to all your students. I kind of apologize that they're being subjected to my overlong sentences and overlong words. It's possibly not the easiest way to learn colloquial English, but I'm incredibly pleased that this is a thing that is happening, and I wish them all absolutely the best with their studies, and obviously enjoin them to stay tuned to Monocle Radio.
Okay, give them a few pieces of advice on how to improve their English, please, with the little time that we have.
That's actually really easy. The best way to improve, well, I get asked, well, not a lot, but occasionally by people about, being a better writer, learning how to write better. The only real answer to that is to read. Like, read and read and read and read and read, and figure out why you like some writers, why you don't like other writers. Figure out what kind of English sparks something in you, and then try to write that. I mean, I think when anybody starts writing, they are mostly writing impersonations of their favorite writers. And for me, that was the journalists at Melody Maker, the British rock magazine in the late 1980s. That's who I wanted to be like when I grew up. And I think the same applies to learning to speak the language. And I think people who already speak other languages, and I suspect that applies to most, if not all, of your students, I think have an advantage because they'll be used to listening to how people talk in other languages. And I think the same thing is true. I mean, find broadcasters whose use of the language you like. Find people you enjoy listening to, and listen to them, and figure out what it is that you enjoy listening to. Figure out what it is about them that you enjoy listening to and try to replicate that. I think it's like most other things. You learn it by doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Indeed. And to the teacher, what methods should I deploy in bettering my own style of teaching?
I'm sure your own style of teaching doesn't need any help from me. I suspect you're doing really, really well. You have clearly enjoy learning stuff, and you clearly enjoy communicating stuff, and those are basically the only two things any journalist needs. It's asking people questions and relaying their answers at its most fundamental.
Definitely. Well, I don't have to hold you a bit longer, rather. Andrew Mueller, I can't thank you enough for sparing your precious time to be with me on Global Arena, and I hope this is not your last time. I hope one day, maybe in the distant future or so, we'll be able to invite you again on a panel of journalists, global journalists, to talk about journalism from different perspectives. Because I normally host what I call intercontinental panel interview. I get a guy from the UK, that's European experience. I get a guy from Asia, Asian experience, and a guy from Africa with an African point of view. So when you put them together, get an amalgam of experiences, and that really has worked a lot for me, just like what you do on Monocle Radio, especially on the daily and other programs you present. That's absolutely marvelous.
It's pretty much it. No, my absolute pleasure, and always feel free to ask.
All right, yes. So finally, let me do this formal closing. All right, viewers, that has been a 2-episode interview with me, Umar Issa Dandago, and my guest, Andrew Mueller, the presenter of Monocle Daily and Foreign Desk Explainers and Foreign Desk programs, interviews on Monocle Radio there at Maduri House in London. I hope one day Global Arena will move to Monocle Radio and have face-to-face interviews with Andrew Mueller. Andrew Mueller, thank you for being on the show.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
And my regards to your team members, Christy O'Grady and Emma Saul, and my congratulations to her on getting married.
I'll pass that along. Thank you.
All right.